call the meeting to order. September 29, 2020. The first order on the agenda tonight is the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adequate notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, 1 Collier Lane, Basking Ridge, on the township website, and emailed to the Burnsville News, Whippany, the Courier News, Bridgewater, tapinto.net, patch.com, and filed with the township clerk on December 10th, 2019. Any motion to go into closed session will be deemed to include a motion that the matters discussed at such closed session will be disclosed to the public when such matters are finally determined, and there is no further reason to prohibit the public disclosure of information relating to such matters. No new business will be introduced after 10:30 p.m. Public comment will be accepted at all meetings. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes each, and all meetings will adjourn no later than 11:30 p.m. Roll call, please, Jordan.
Mr. Carpenter?
Here.
Mr. Esposito?
Here.
Ms. Fields?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
Mayor Baldessari?
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is executive session. We do not have one tonight. Reports is next.
None this evening.
All right, which brings us to correspondence.
Yes, there are two this evening. First, there is a July 2nd letter on behalf of SK Allen Road Associates regarding PUD 5 Mount Laurel option, and the township planner Dave Schley is in the audience if there are any questions.
Would you care to introduce yourself, state name and
Yes,
address for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Michael Grodnick. I'm an attorney at Savill, Gillespie, Grodnick & Fisher. Tonight we're requesting that the township consider amending the PUD 5 zone, which is a zone that was created solely for the subject property as part of the Hills development in the 1980s. Property is known as Highlands Village. It's 78,000 square feet. It's a mixed-use complex. Currently houses retail, pharmacy, post office, dentist, a large daycare facility. The impetus for our request really stems from one of your ordinance sections, which states that no less than 50% and no more than 75% of the space be occupied by retail uses. So even though these uses are permitted in the zone, every time we have a new tenant in the strip center, which has been built out for decades, it necessitates full board approvals, which have been routinely granted, but we're asking to remove that requirement, somewhat of an unusual requirement in a zoning ordinance, and also to allow some additional uses. Right now there's 83.1% retail as of the Koo Chinese Academy application that I handled. Also, there's a large childcare center there, Tiny Turtles. The zoning ordinance limits childcare to no more than 7,500 square feet. So it's been expanding. They've been taking up strip center spaces for their infant rooms. So again, every time they expand, we have to go back and get C-bulk variances for that deviation. So we're asking not only to remove that sort of ratio requirement, but also to add some additional uses. I would call them kind of trendy uses, including adult daycare, winery, brewery, distillery, and drive-through restaurant, since there's an existing vacant drive-through at the bank space. Again, significant time delays. We're losing tenants because it's taking so much time to get through the process, and of course the costs associated with a full application. I have Jim Kyle with me. I don't think we really need to introduce him. He wrote a letter that essentially details what we're asking for. I also have Peter Wisniewski on behalf of the owner, which is SK Allen Road Associates, KRE Group. So Peter, if you could just give us, a 1 minute narration or summation of why we're requesting this.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Peter Wisniewski. I'm the Executive Vice President of Kislak, our commercial real estate firm. I've been the leasing agent for Highland Village for about 8 years now. And even during that time, I've seen the community climate change in terms of demand, excuse me, in terms of demands and wants and needs. Traditionally, I think the shopping center was built to service the entire town. The center really is more geared towards the Hills community. and service uses have been vitally important there. Tenants today want a quick turnaround. They like space. They sign a deal. They want to know that they can get in 60 days, 90 days. Having to go through the approval process has given us some disappointment with several tenants that have walked away. So I think we need a little bit more latitude in terms of being able to keep that center strong, because with it vacant, it really hurts, I think, in the long run. It hurts the other tenants that have been there quite a long time.
Thank you.
Any questions?
None off the top of my head right now for you, sir, so thank you. Anybody else? No? Mr. Sly, would you care to come up and comment?
Yeah, I think the main, or one of the main issues is the 75% maximum retail requirement. All of our other shopping center areas, Dewey Meadow and 100 Marketplace, Riverwalk and Lions Mall, well, most of them anyway, have minimum requirements for retail. In the case of the Highlands Village Center, there's a maximum. So that's unique to that center. It's put a strain on getting new tenants. The same thing with their daycare limit. There's a cap on floor area. The other centers don't have a cap on any particular category of use. It's mainly, we want retail. We want a good amount of retail, especially with the first floor tenants, but to cap it, there are some significant differences. Actually, the Highlands Village Center has about 80 extra parking spaces above and beyond what their commercial use requires. And that is, there's a reason for that. It was originally planned that it could be used as a park and ride facility, and the planning board approvals for the site also provide for the Master Association recreation area sharing some of that parking. I don't know how much parking is actually used for park and ride use or for the recreation area. I don't envision it's 80 spaces. When the Board of Adjustment has heard the last 3 cases in the last 3 or 4 years, all the observations by the Board of Adjustment members anyway were that every time I go there seems to be adequate parking. So it didn't, it wasn't too much.
Every time I go there seems to be adequate parking, so, yeah.
Right, similar, that's been pretty much everyone I've come across experience. So, I mean, in my opinion, it's something that I would suggest at least be looked at. And actually, most of the uses that are in Mr. Kyle's letter, some of them presently aren't permitted, but a lot of them are included under the umbrella of retail sales and services. And so that's not really a change. But just because they're permitted doesn't mean they can move in because of the floor area limitations and the percentage requirements. So it's tricky, and it could be cleaned up a little. I don't know about everything in the request, but certainly I think that zoning for that village center area could use some at least tweaking.
Some updating.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Sly?
Can I?
Please.
So this dates from 1990, I guess, or 91?
Yeah, 91 was when those particular requirements, talking about percentage of floor area limits, came into play.
At the time, was like the King's Plaza open, or, down
I
at the...
believe that all came first, I'm not sure. The Bedminster side of it was
Bedminster,
developed
okay.
first, generally speaking. I don't know for a fact that particular aspect of it. Yeah, it was all bundled up in the litigation agreement, settlement agreement ordinance, and I researched it, could not find any, well, not much at all about the reason
village complex. And added on top of that, we have the COVID-19 pandemic, which doesn't make things any easier, so I think we need to be in a position to do all that we possibly can to help our residents and our businesses, with today's reality. So I would encourage, and Pat, I would ask you, maybe instruct Mr. Schley to go ahead and start working on something like that, and reasonable changes and updates to the ordinances, so that we can go over the same, and I guess make our decision from there. Does that sound?
I support that.
I do as well.
I do too.
Same.
All right. Does that sound reasonable, gentlemen? All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Next item on the agenda.
We do have another correspondence. It is an August 27th letter from the Historical Society of Somerset Hills, inviting the Township Committee to their October 22nd meeting.
Is there anyone here from the Historical Society that would care to comment? Seeing no one, I don't believe, is there any formal action that needs to be taken on this, or it's just an invite?
Yep,
I think
just
if,
an invite.
If I'm open on the 22nd, I could swing by. All right. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, unfinished business. Ordinance number 2453.
This is an ordinance to amend the revised general ordinances of the Township of Bernard's, Chapter 14, Fire Prevention. This is a public hearing, and our fire official, Mark Sylvester, is here to field any questions as well.
All right, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open the floor for public questions, public comments or questions. Seeing no one, I'm going to close comments, and I will ask for a motion.
Mayor, I move that ordinance 2453 be adopted and advertised as required by law.
All right, good.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jordan.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Fields?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Baldessari?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Mark. The next item on the agenda, we have our public work session, Resolution 2020-0234.
This is a resolution to create a diversity and inclusion committee.
Okay. As this is a work session,
Mayor, if I could interrupt,
please.
that was, people are having a hard time hearing. If we could all speak into the mics
I'm sorry.
because of the masks.
All right.
Thank you.
Got it. So public work session. I'm on the wrong one here. There we go. All right, well, I want to thank Ms. Harris and Mr. Carpenter for their work back and forth, going back, trying to come up with a resolution that we could put forth before the public, and hopefully use this as a building block to establish something that a number of our residents are looking for us to establish and get going. So with that, I believe if we want to go through one at a time here, I'm going to read, I'll read it as we go along, and I will stop when anyone on the dais here has any questions or any comments, if they want me to stop, and if they want to weigh in, I would ask that you do so. And then we will also allow public comment on this as we're going through, all right?
Do you want to read it off the paper? Is it easier from the screen?
Either way, my eyes are going. Thank you. All right. Resolution 2020-0234, resolution to create a diversity and inclusion committee. Whereas Bernard's Township is a community dedicated to fostering a welcoming environment and providing its residents with an exceptional place to live. And whereas Bernard's Township believes in the inherent dignity and worth of each human being, and that our community can become even stronger, more cohesive, and more interesting by embracing its diversity and capitalizing on the strength resulting from that diversity. And whereas Bernard's Township believes learning about our differences can bring people closer together, allow us to recognize how much we have in common as human beings, and further advance and enhance the mutual respect, hospitality, and warmth of our community. And whereas Bernards Township believes it is best to explore these topics in an open, positive environment. Now therefore be it resolved by the Bernards Township Committee, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey as follows. The Township Committee hereby authorizes the establishment of a committee to be named the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, dedicated to fostering an atmosphere of understanding and acceptance of each individual to further strengthen Bernards Township as a welcoming, exceptional place to live, work, and grow. 2, the duties of the duties of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee shall be as follows. To advise the Township Committee at least twice annually on opportunities to continue to promote and build on harmony among all Township residents, to further advise on ways to encourage goodwill, cooperation, and unity among the diverse residents of the Township, to recommend educational and cultural programs to foster unity and develop a sense of community, and such other duties as shall be suggested and approved by the Township Committee. Now therefore, be it further resolved that the membership of the Diversity Inclusion Committee shall consist of 11 members, which shall formally meet on a monthly basis. The monthly meetings shall be open to the public. Members shall be selected by the Township Committee consensus and should, to the greatest extent possible, reflect the diversity of Bernards Township and serve for a period of 1 year. The Township Committee shall annually designate one of the members to serve as the chair and presiding officer. The Township Committee shall appoint members so as to obtain a committee with as broad a variety of experiences, perspectives, and backgrounds as possible. Qualifications to serve on the Diversity Inclusion Committee shall include comity towards all, an open mind, a sense of community. Membership and qualifications to the committee may include but shall not be limited to the following: a representative from the Township Committee, a representative of the Township Police Department, a representative from the local school district administration, a representative of local religious groups, and a representative with significant knowledge of diversity and inclusion training or facilitation. Now therefore be it finally resolved that the Bernards Township Diversity and Inclusion Committee will organize immediately upon its appointment by all members of the Township Committee.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
So there's just on the first page, number 2,
Okay,
that should be changed to Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
correct, yes.
Okay. And may I just add
Please.
one more comment?
Please.
So as to C, I would like to see language that would include to recommend educational and cultural programs to foster unity, develop a sense of community, and examine biases. I think that all of us as humans have biases, and they should be examined if you're creating a diversity and inclusion committee, and I think we should state that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harris. Do you have any other comments?
No, but I would, if there, I would
Oh,
like
yeah,
to hear.
I definitely want to hear what the public has to say, absolutely. Does
Yes.
anybody have any comments from the dais so far?
Just one other comment. I do appreciate Mr. Carpenter's efforts in working with me. I really do. So thank you.
Thank
No, good.
you. Good?
I'm listening to everybody else.
No, good. Yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also would like to acknowledge Mrs. Harris. It was a pleasure to work with her. She's a very determined person. And I'm fine with the resolution as it is posted on our agenda this evening, but I accept Mrs. Harris's changes with the exception of examine biases, because I don't really feel it's appropriate for us as a committee to determine who has biases and who doesn't have biases. And I don't think it's right to even infer that people do have biases. I think that's part of the problem that we're experiencing in this country today, the assumption that everyone has biases. So I'd be fine with every change that Mrs. Harris suggested, save that one.
All right, thank you. Anybody else, any comments before we go to the public? All right, I'd ask at this point that anyone from the public that has any comments or they want to discuss anything, please come up and share your thoughts.
Hello, Jane Conklin.
I'm sorry, Ms. Conklin, right?
Would you mind pulling your mask down while you speak?
I can just go closer to the mic, does that work?
That works.
Okay. Thanks. Okay,
Excuse me, what's the address?
it's 110 Spencer Road.
Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to thank Joan Harris and John Carpenter for taking the time to put together the proposal for this very important committee in our town. I am very pleased that the Township Committee as a whole has chosen to go ahead with plans for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. It's an area that I feel has been lacking in our town for a long time, so it's hopeful that we may be moving forward. I would like to suggest a change to the proposal, which would include an explicit definition of diversity to be added to ensure that the committee will address issues faced by residents based on race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, national origin, gender identity, age, and abilities. In this way, we will ensure that all different diverse groups within our town are part of the conversation. The original draft resolution 2020-0234 contained a definition of diversity, including all of the categories of diversity expected to be addressed by a diversity and inclusion committee. The current draft does not define diversity. We want to ensure that this diversity and inclusion committee duties include addressing the issues faced by the township residents based on any and all types of diversity that they represent. Therefore, we propose to add the following definition of diversity into the resolution. References in this resolution to the term diverse or diversity shall be deemed to include the following categories of diversity: race and color, ethnicity, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, and abilities. Also, I just wanted to respectfully disagree with Mr. Carpenter in saying that not everybody has biases. By saying that, I think we're not really looking at reality. Everybody comes from some place, wherever they come from, and they know what they know. And to say that there are some people that don't have biases in one way, shape, or form, I think is a little bit tone deaf. I think that it would be beneficial to add something like that. It doesn't hurt anybody, and it certainly makes us look a little bit closer at what might be blind to some people in saying that some people don't have biases. So I would respectfully disagree with you on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
So John Coelho, 22 Benedict Crescent. Just as a point of fact, my own identification, I'm cross-racial, so two. I'm married to naturalized, an American, a Caucasian. I've lived in 4 countries in the world, and I'm very proud to be a resident of Burnett Township. I have never faced in this township any form of bias. So, I acknowledge some of the points that you've made, and I just would like to express, I think it's when we count or call out bias, you're pointing to the differences, and what we should be looking at is what brings us together. It's a very subtle but a very important point. I think that's what I think we need now more than anything else. So my urge to the Township Committee, however you choose to finish the ordinances, leave it to the committee to decide how to frame and define those points versus try to do it here, because you're never going to get it exactly right. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cody Smith, 36 Royal Oak Drive. So I found the timing of this resolution quite interesting with the election year. and it appears that it's the Democratic Committee here in town and ISBR, the Islamic Society of Basking Ridge, that is trying to push this through. And it's quite ironic. I haven't seen any bias in this town. There was this issue that was mentioned about some incident that happened at Ridge High School years ago. I asked my kids about that. They said something like that could never happen now. So I find this all trying to highlight our differences and create differences rather than trying to solve any kind of problem, because I do not believe there's a problem. And I found it quite interesting that with ISBR pushing this, where they're the ones that are the instigators, and saying that there's bias in this town. That was the whole reason for the lawsuit. I thought it's quite interesting if you go back and you look at the December 24th, 2015 editorial in the Bernardsville News, which is sort of a left-leaning paper with regard to the planning board's decision to not approve the mosque. They said, "We are confident that the planning board made the decision based on facts and legitimate zoning concerns about the construction project, not due to intolerance or bigotry. Chaudhry should have recognized the neighbors of the property were staunchly opposed to the concept of having a religious facility of this size at this particular site. While an appeal is still a possibility, the ISBR would be wise to consider a more appropriate option within the community." But as we know, they didn't do that. Instead of going to Somerset County and going to the courts here locally as a land planning or planning board issue, they went straight to the federal courts and declaimed religious bias. They had the New York Times with an editorial all lined up that was published the next day. We know that it was leaked to them because if you go through the link and look at the lawsuit does not have the court markings in the document, and they couldn't have written an article that quickly in that time, and that article smeared the township and its residents as a bunch of bigots and bias. If we go on, then 4 days later, the DOJ got involved. And we have reports that Robert Raymar, the politically connected lawyer of ISBR, was phoning the DOJ. The DOJ wouldn't respond to my Freedom of Information Act request. I don't think it responded to the township. So they're stonewalling. Before long, I got a phone call from Beth Pepper, a lawyer in the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ. You look her up, she's a leftist. She wanted to interview to support the preordained conclusion that we're all a bunch of racists in town. I told her I'd have to talk to my lawyer first. She asked why in the world I would have a lawyer. It's because ISBR's president elected to subpoena me and ask for all of my documents concerning plaintiffs ISBR and Dr. Muhammad Ali Chaudhry, documents concerning Muslim, Islam, mosques, and so on, documents sufficient to show my email addresses and social media accounts. So it's quite ironic that the ones that are putting forth to have this committee are the ones that were smearing and creating bias and racism among the residents of town, not understanding why we wouldn't want that giant mosque across from the Liberty Corner Fire Company. And so, as you may know, the settlement agreement that was reached requires the township to train all the current and future members of the planning board and the township committee regarding diversity and inclusion of persons of all religious races, genders, and national origins, including with regard to Islam and Muslims specifically. And as we know, Mr. Carpenter, you voted against both the settlement agreement and the DOJ action, and Mr. Baldessari, you voted against the DOJ action. And now what this group is back doing is asking you with the power of the township committee to basically put us all through that training in town. So with the resolution, when you look at the committee members, particularly troubling is a representative from the local school district. So now all of our kids are biased too. And whatever this committee comes up to, we need to push it through the school system. A representative of local religious groups, and a representative with significant knowledge of diversity and inclusion training or facilitation. Now, what does that mean and why is that necessary? So does that mean that I get to go through training now because of my claimed biases that everybody has? And I think with that, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Can I just clarify something, just so he knows, because I had a question too, just so you know about the school representative and the, it may include, it's not mandatory for them to be included in the committee, just so you know, I just want to clarify that, okay?
Then strike it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for comments? Please.
Name, Siddharth Sasane. I'll spell that for you. Siddarth. Last name Sasane, Sasane. Address 45 Georgetown Court.
Thank you.
I first want to start by just quickly addressing a few things. First of all, the comment that Mr. Carpenter made about biases. In one way, I agree with you. I 100% agree that most of us don't intentionally carry our biases around. And I also acknowledge that most of us don't feel like we have any biases. I would push back on the notion that such language is not necessary in the resolution simply because biases aren't a bad thing. Biases are simply a product of our differences. And if this resolution seeks to diminish and reduce the differences between the residents of this town, the language pertaining to bias is just another way to do that. This isn't saying anyone on this committee, anyone in this town is biased. Rather, this is only saying, the word bias is only there to represent another way in which we tend to be different. We tend to view each other and other people differently. And so I would point to that and say, biases, you may think you don't have biases. I certainly think I don't have biases, but at the end of the day, we do, because we are all different. I was raised differently from yourself, sir, and you were probably raised differently than Ms. Harris. So I think that if we are hell-bent on viewing these biases as negative, or as viewing the word bias as a call-out, then you may be right, but that's not necessarily what it is. It's just pointing out our differences. I would also like to push back on the idea that this is somehow peddled by the ISBR. That is not true, because I am certainly a member of this group, have no affiliation with the ISBR. And I would also like to point out that we here are trying to move forward and position this town, help this town move into a future that is undoubtedly more diverse and different than what we see today. I would vehemently push back against the gentleman who said that, quote, the certain article painted everyone as a bunch of, in this town as a bunch of racists. And I find it curious that he would use that language and then proceed to paint everyone within this group who was trying to get this resolution passed as part of ISBR. And I would also push back against the idea that being part of the ISBR is in some way a bad thing. There is no double jeopardy in this country. The ISBR case happened the way it happened. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, but we cannot keep bringing these things up. And I would also point to the fact and say that this is one of the reasons we want this committee. So he can explain his differences to someone from the Muslim community, someone from ISBR, and say, this is what I feel. His differences can be brought forward. And they don't end up, and the generalizations, which often, too often, and I am no way accusing the gentleman of doing so, but too often turn into anger and resentment. That doesn't happen. Moving on, I would like to thank Mrs. Harris and Mr. Carpenter. Thank you for writing this resolution. Thank you for working together. And thank you to the entire committee for considering it and giving us an opportunity to speak on it. Firstly, there's two changes that I saw. First of all, the resolution states that duties of the committee shall include promotion of non-toleration of bias and discrimination and promotion of inclusion. At the July 23rd meeting, several residents voiced their concerns, and they voiced their experiences with discrimination in this town. And I apologize, that's not what the resolution says. That's what I would like that resolution to say. And I say this simply because we understand that the purpose of such a committee is, yes, to address these instances of bias. But unless there is direct wording in the resolution to say we are going to actively work against discrimination, and we are actively going to promote non-discriminatory efforts, then we will always be playing catch-up. And you don't want to be playing catch-up in a game where we're trying to make this community a more inclusive place. So simply for that reason, there should be some language that directly addresses the idea of actively working against racism and discrimination that may take various forms. Some sort of language could be to promote non-tolerance of bias, something to say that we will actively work against that. And secondly, the draft says that the committee will meet twice annually, or the committee rather will report to this township committee twice annually. And that just doesn't strike me as enough. And I would say that because the acts that we are talking about are not big. They're not gigantic things that will make the national news. But they are small things that add up, that make residents of this town feel like they are not welcome here. And for that reason, there needs to be a more consistent reporting basis back to this committee, because at the end of the day, we all elected you, and you guys hold the power. So while this committee can advise you, if you're not giving them the chance to advise you and the chance to speak to you, then there is this committee loses its teeth. And I would also say that there needs to be a separate mechanism for people to report, for people to come forward and say, this happened. For people to report either to this committee or to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee that something happened and I want to say it. And I say this for two reasons. One, they deserve to be heard. I think we would all agree as citizens of this town. But two, if there is a misunderstanding, if there is something that you or the offenders do not agree with, they should have the right to address it in front, and they should bring it to you, and they should be able to address it amongst themselves, but you should have knowledge of it. There's no language in this resolution that says any of that. And so those are my comments. I would like to thank, again, the entire committee for taking this resolution, taking it seriously, and giving us time to talk about it. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for comment? Please.
Yasmina Chaudhry, 58 Manor Drive. Do I need to spell that?
No, you're okay.
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Carpenter and Ms. Harris for the great work you did on the resolution in the past 2 months. I think we've made a lot of progress in the draft, and that I think is pleasing to all of us who were, so focused on this in the past few months. I'd like to echo the comments of Jane and Siddharth regarding including a solid definition of diversity, so that it's very clear that the committee is going to address issues not just of race and religion, but also of abilities, age, sexual orientation, et cetera, so that everyone feels included. I also agree that we could probably use some more frequent reporting to the Township Committee, because things happen, obviously not on a periodic basis, but they happen when they happen. And so if there's some mechanism for more immediate reporting, that would help a lot. I think also the idea that the duty of the committee goes beyond the promotion of harmony and unity, that it specifically goes to the promotion of anti-discrimination and bias, which is not to say that anyone's being told they have bias, but the committee's job would be to promote the value of non-discrimination and no tolerance for discrimination and no tolerance for bias. Would make it very clear to the committee members what their remit is and what they stand for. I'd like to make some comments regarding the distribution of the membership of the committee. I think the number of committee members is now 11, which I think is pretty good. There may be some differences. People may think a few more members may be necessary in order to fully reflect the diversity of the township community. I leave that to you. I think 11 is probably manageable, probably for the first year of the committee. I do want to point out, though, that I would like to make sure that this language that you have regarding the selection of the 11 members, I'll quote it, so as to obtain a committee with as broad a variety of experiences, perspectives, and backgrounds as possible. And also, I think there's some language in there about having the 11 members fully reflect the diversity of the township. I just want to make sure that that, really is taken to heart when you get the applications from people, and you fully consider making sure this committee includes, newcomers, people who've never served on a board, people who represent different, faith or ethnic communities in town, et cetera. I think a couple of things that can be done, this is not necessarily a change to the language of the resolution, but a couple of things that can be done to promote that is, please make sure there's a sufficient amount of time to let people put in an application. Please make sure there's really good publicity of the opportunity to serve on this committee. And also maybe some specific outreach to different, ethnic affinity groups, religious groups in town, to make sure everyone knows about this opportunity and they have the chance to apply. I guess I also want to go, I'm seeking a little bit of clarification on the 5 additional qualifications for certain members of the committee, member of the school district or representative of the school district, police, township committee, et cetera. I think these designations do make sense. I understand it may include, because you can't necessarily dictate that a representative of the school district join the committee. That makes sense to me. I guess the one thing I just want to make sure of is if there are 11 members total, and you may be seeking, 4 or 5 positions reflecting these functional groups, police, school district, township committee, member of local religious groups, and I guess the last one is someone familiar with diversity training. To just make sure that those functional designations don't end up constituting the majority of the committee, right? I think the intent, right, is for the majority of the committee to represent private residents of the township who reflect the full diversity of the township. So if it never goes beyond the 5, and that 6 are, 6 spots are designated to private residents, that, seems to be what the purpose of the committee is for. I think I also want a little bit of clarification on the language regarding a representative of local religious groups. One of the comments I made probably in an email in June was that I think the original language might have been something to the effect of a local clergy member. And I think I pointed out in that resolution that, if there's one spot for a clergy member, and I think at that time it was probably a 3-year designation, then, so one year you might appoint, a priest of this church or, a rabbi of a synagogue, but then every other religious congregation in town might not feel included because the spot went to some other religious congregation. I know that Ms. Harris is actually, and also Mayor Baldessari has also met with the informal local group of Basking Ridge clergy. And if the idea is that that group of interfaith clergy get together and say, okay, every year they pick somebody to represent the interests of all of the congregations and just sort of act as a liaison to the committee, that seems to make sense to me. What I think, becomes a little bit problematic is if you just choose one member of the clergy each year and they're only representing their congregation, because obviously they don't have a responsibility to represent any congregation other than their own. So I think that is all I have in terms of new comments to the draft. Again, thank you for your hard work on the resolution, and look forward to seeing the next turn of it.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments?
Todd Edelstein, Riverside Drive. So much to go through, so little time.
Well, Todd, let's just remember that this is about the diversity.
Oh, yes.
There we go. Okay.
And being a person of color, I understand that. I come from a very quite diverse family. My brothers and sister have married outside the religion, and I have a stepson who married a different person from a different race. And so I'm quite familiar with that. I worked in a town that was quite different from how I grew up. So I just want to say, I really don't believe in this trendy resolution, because it is trendy. And I hope I'm not going to be labeled, but knowing what happened at the last meeting, where people got up here and basically labeled several of the committee people as racist because they didn't support this. And God forbid you don't support it because there must be something wrong. You must be hiding something. So I'm not really for that. I don't really like that part. I don't like it, the fact that the couple meetings, people have gotten up and said, well, the town was against the mosque, and, we were improperly treated on the mosque. Committee had nothing to do with that the decision. It was a planning board decision. And I don't think they were using anything about race when they did their decision. And I hate hearing about, not the mosque itself, just the problem that happened then. The mosque is being built now. It's a dead dog, and it really should never be brought up at this meeting, at any meeting. I was at a zoning board meeting, and somebody was questioning about not a Baptist church, a church being built on Valley Road across from the Lions Hospital. And they came up and they were looking for some zoning changes and stuff like that. And one of the neighbors got up, and they have the right to, dissent on it. But the first words he was saying is that this is not the same as the mosque. I support the mosque, and what the town did about the mosque was wrong. They treated them badly. But this is different because, they're going to have a lot of noise and lights, and I live here. The exact same thing that the people who lived around the mosque felt. And I hope I never talk about the mosque again, because I think I'm being stupid about it. It hurts me to talk about that. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. But my question about this resolution really comes down to, what is this committee really going to do? What's the tangible thing it's going to do? Tangible. I mean, what is it? It's not like the Deer Management Committee or the Shade Tree or Environmental or Library Board or even the Emergency Management Meeting, where there's tangible goals of things they're going to be doing. This committee is not supposed to be teaching people things about how to love your neighbor. People have their own ideas of who they love and who they don't love. And you can't force people into that. And I don't expect somebody to be forced into it. But I'd like to know exactly, specifically what they're going to do. This thing about having a report at least twice annually. You can't get the rate committees to get a report barely once a year, and you're going to get this committee to do it twice a year? Or more, and say, well, we should have it more often. This committee has never had a problem with somebody coming up here and voicing a disagreement or a problem that they had. And if somebody has a problem where they were treated poorly by a town employee or even anything, they have the right, and they can always come up here and say, damn it, I was treated badly because I wear blue jeans, and I don't think that's right, as for example. And I don't think we need a committee to have that. People always had the chance to come up here and voice their problems. So, in conclusion, this is going to happen, this committee's going to happen. And I hope it does what it's supposed to do, wherever that's going to be. Saying that this committee should have teeth is kind of wrong, because it's the town committee that makes the decisions, not a subcommittee. Subcommittee has no right to tell the town what to do. Shade Tree Committee doesn't come up here, damn it, we shouldn't cut any trees down that are less than 2 inches in diameter. No, none of those committees do that. And I don't expect this committee to come up here and to basically write a report demanding the town to do that sort of stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Seeing no one, I will turn to the dais and see if anyone has any comments, any questions, anything that they heard out there that they want to jump in on?
Yeah, I'll say a few things, Mayor. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your comments this evening. I want to point out a few things. I don't envision this committee being a place where people go to complain and air their grievances if they think they've been wronged in some way. That's not what this is about. This is about providing a venue for people who want to learn more about each other, about their neighbors, about what we have in common. The intent is not to create a committee, and we saw some of the problem with it tonight, a committee that represents every possible facet of the population of Bernards Township, because it's not possible. Every 4 years, the Democrat National Committee always talks about creating a convention that looks like America, but they never succeed at it because they can't. I guess it's a popular idea in the Democrat Party, but it's just not possible to do because there are so many different people in the United States. They're so different in so many ways that no matter how many people you pick, there'll always be others who feel they aren't represented. And when this topic first came up, I don't know, geez, it was a month or two ago, we were still receiving comments by email because of the COVID virus. And, you know, as we were discussing who might or might not be on this committee, we received an email from someone that says, I don't see anyone mentioning the parents of disabled children, special needs children. We're underrepresented. So, I mean, right while we were discussing it, we heard there were people who felt aggrieved by the composition of this committee. So I don't buy into the white privilege thing. I don't buy into the notion that this country has systemic racism. I don't buy into this whole business with anti-racism. I don't believe that people are by and large biased. It's not to say that no one is. And I really believe we need to focus on what we have in common. And my hope is that this committee is a place where people of goodwill can get together, share what we have in common, and anyone who wants to come and participate would be welcome to come. That's how I see it. I heard a lot of interesting comments tonight. I didn't agree with a lot of them. I agreed with a lot of them. But that's how I feel about this, and I'd be prepared to vote for this as drafted with the changes Mrs. Harris suggested, sans the reference to bias. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
I do have, I'm sorry, Joe.
That's all right. Well, a couple of things, and the first one's going to be personal, and so apologize if I get a little emotional talking about it. Todd, I have to correct you with what you said. The people on this committee were not against this resolution. What happened at the last meeting, to me, was a disgrace. My assumption that the last meeting where we discussed this would have been exactly the same as this one, a very civil discourse about something that is on the work session. There was not a resolution that was up for vote the last time, and shame on the media for reporting that it was. Shame on the people who called people bigots and racists for wanting to have a discussion about it. So I apologize for getting very personal about it, but I took it very personal the last time, because all I was looking to do was have a discussion. And I thanked everyone who commented tonight for being civil about it. The one comment that someone said tonight, and I forget who said it, if we try to draft something, we're never going to get it right. We are never going to draft a perfect resolution. You know, it says at least twice a year. We have public comment twice at every meeting. If people want to come forward and tell us what happened at this committee, all for it. Come on up. Come to every township committee meeting and report. So we're trying, but it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harris? Janice?
Janice?
I'll go last. I don't have that much to add.
So just a few comments. First of all, a little historical, factual context for this resolution. The first time that someone came before this not this township committee, but the Bernard Township Committee for some kind of forming of a civil rights committee was actually 20 years ago. And interestingly, it was 20 years to the date when I raised this issue. That was the family of Captain Robert Terry, who lived in town. I spoke about him at the first meeting when we discussed this resolution. He taught the Tuskegee. He was a flight instructor at the Somerset Hills Airport, and he taught the Tuskegee Airmen. His family came before the Township Committee 20 years ago and asked for the formation of a Civil Rights Committee. I don't have more information than that, but I'm not aware that such a committee was formed. I raised the idea for this committee after I had heard about the same thing happening in Bernardsville, and I thought it was a good idea. So I have to take issue with any kind of comment that this was created by the ISBR. Of course, the ISBR, as well as all residents, are welcome to attend these meetings, to put their interest, if they want to serve on this committee, to let us know about it. 400 people signed a petition saying that they were in favor of this. So to suggest that this was created by one group is just not correct, sir. And I hear a lot of I think, Todd, what's trendy is to call people leftists or far right or racist or label people like that. And it's my hope that this committee can focus on what we share in common, but also the things that make us different. Both things are okay. It's really okay to speak about these things. And when you don't speak about them, that's when there's trouble. So I would like to also add the fact that there's been a lot of progress. We're 20 years from when the Terry family came in before the Township Committee asking for a Civil Rights Committee. We're 2 years past a debate when I first ran for Township Committee where the idea was panned by the people that I was running against. We're past a meeting in June where there was a lively discussion, not support for a committee, but a support for a forum or other program. And I have to say, I really enjoyed working on this with John Carpenter because we do think very, very differently. And I think this resolution kind of gives voice to both those perspectives. And isn't that what we want in a diversity and inclusion committee? We will never get this perfect, and I don't want perfect to stand in the way of progress. The committee can really make the best of what is here and their intentions. And by the way, I don't for 1 minute think that anyone sitting up here on this dais has anything but the best intentions of the town of Basking Ridge or anyone in this audience. So I do want to thank every one of you who came up and spoke. It's important to use your voice. It's important to tell us how you feel. And I would be in favor of getting this off the ground and taking a vote and moving this forward this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Mrs. Fields?
Oh, okay. I just want to say, Joe, I was with you on that. I am a resident, so I want to apologize for the residents. It's unfortunate because this really was and is a positive thing that we want to do for the community, bring people together in our differences and learn from one another. But when we started this, unfortunately, it went off the rails and it became very negative. And we did want to do this. We just wanted to change the wording. And that was heard by certain individuals in our community as that we were racist and bigoted. And it's horrible that we, as Township Committee people, would be attacked that way, and it would be spun that way. It's furthest from the truth. All of us work very hard here, and our best interest is always the community. And like they all said, it's true, we're never gonna get it right. And I said this to Joan, it's a start. On anything else that you try in life, any committee, anything that you do the first year, you'll learn as you go, and then the second year, you put into it the things that you learned that it needed that you didn't have originally. So that's what we need to do. We need to start this. I'm happy with the way that it is, and I'm ready to move forward on it.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank
Fields.
you.
My thoughts on the resolution is that it's a good place to start. Like my colleagues have said up here, that it's never going to please everyone 100%. There's always room for improvement, and I'm going to trust the committee when they are established and the people are chosen to serve on this, and I'm going to look to them and to that committee to introduce certain measures or aspects that they think should be brought to light. That's the whole purpose for creating the committee, and I think that if we leave it more open-ended in terms of allowing them that flexibility, I think that's going to be the best possible start that we can have. So with that, I will take a motion if somebody wants to make a motion.
Well, I would suggest that we take the draft, amend it as Mrs. Harris suggests, if she's agreeable. I would like to see that phrase bias removed from it, and then I could vote for that.
It wasn't in there.
It's not in it.
It's not
But
in there.
you proposed some revisions to it.
Well, there was just really, I want to say, a typo.
Okay, so you're proposing to vote on the resolution as it is before us?
As it is before us, with the exception of crossing out in number 2, the duties of, instead of Community Engagement Committee, it would read Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Right, that just was an
Right.
error.
And I would like to strike out the phrase about bias.
Okay, there is none.
no phrase.
Okay, then I'm fine with it.
All right, well then I'll take a motion on that.
So I move to accept Resolution 2020-0234 with the correction of the language in paragraph 2.
Is there any, can I get a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, any further discussion on this?
That's the
Well,
only
just
change,
a
correct?
question, so, I mean, there were a couple of suggestions about adding the definition of diversity. There was a comment, and I believe, I just want a clarification about, confirming how many members of the public. I think even in those 5 enumerated, 2 of them are the public, so I think the intention is that 8 people from the public would be, right? There would only be 3.
Yes.
So I just want to confirm, people had comments and
No,
questions, and we really didn't,
I can address that.
respond to all of them.
A lot of the discussion that Mrs. Harris and I had was around, who should be on this committee, how many people should be on this committee? Because I believe a committee that's too large is unwieldy and not productive. And Mrs. Harris had some ideas about specific categories of people, members that she wanted to see on it. So I think we arrived at language that allowed the Township Committee some leeway in filling the seats. The use of the word may entitles us to, look at the applicant base that we receive and choose people from that applicant base and not be stuck into trying to pigeonhole people into slots. So I'm really comfortable with the structure of it, is describing the language.
In terms of the definition that Ms. Conklin wanted, my personal opinion is that I would leave all of that to the committee itself to determine what it is that they're going to include and why, and what they're going to concentrate on to bring before us. I'm not comfortable putting, to me, personally, it's dividing, it's separating people into categories, and I don't believe that anybody should be put into a category. We're all human beings. We all want to see each other do the best that we can and treat each other with the dignity and respect that we are all entitled to. So I'm not for separating that language. I'm for leaving it all inclusive, but allowing that committee the flexibility to be able to determine what they need or what they see fit in order to present to the Township Committee.
In point of order, Mayor, we have a motion and a second for the resolution as written,
Yes.
with the one amendment about the committee name. So that's really what we're discussing here.
Correct.
We're not amending
I'm just providing my rationale to
Yes.
Ms.
But I do have an answer for your question. So I did ask Joan what you asked, so it's you'll agree with me. So it's 11 members that may include those people, but if you put one of those people in it, it reduces the number. That's what I was told. So it's only going to be 11. So if you put somebody from the school, that means now you have 10 people left. And if you put somebody from the police, now you have 9 people left. So it's only going to be 11. We're
11.
capping it at 11.
11 is 11.
Correct, okay. I think he was kind of asking that.
All right.
Okay.
So with that, will there be any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Ms. Fields.
Yes.
Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Baldessari.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming in and giving your viewpoint tonight. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-0279.
This is a resolution for the establishment of a utility advisory task force.
All right, and this is a public work session, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read this out loud, and we can have some discussion, and then we can invite members from the public to come up and discuss and comment on the same. Establishment of a utility advisory task force. Whereas residents of Bernards Township have voiced the need for Bernards Township Committee to advocate on their behalf regarding communication from and services provided by utility providers, including but not limited to those utilities providing electric, internet, and water. And whereas the providing of these services is essential to the safety, well-being, and livelihood of Bernards Township residents, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when many residents have used their residences as workplaces and schools. And whereas the Bernards Township Committee desires to be proactive in working with the township utility providers to identify causes of outages or other disruption of services so as to reduce our vulnerability of the same in the future, to identify service deficits and/or need for upgrades, and to optimize communication between the utilities and its customers. Now therefore be it resolved by the Bernards Township Committee, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey as follows. The Township Committee hereby authorizes the appointment of a Township Committee Utility Liaison. The Township Committee hereby further authorizes the establishment of a Utility Advisory Task Force consisting up to however many members of the public, the Township Committee Utility Liaison, a member of the Office of Emergency Management, and the Township Administrator. The mission of the Utility Task Force is to assess the level of communication and service from the utility companies providing services to Bernards Township, identify areas of concern and in need of improvement, suggest ways to collect and report chronic outages and disruptions, facilitate and/or coordinate resident feedback to the Board of Public Utilities, and represent Bernards Township customers before the BPU when appropriate. The Utility Task Force will report their findings and recommendations to the Township Committee no later than, open-ended. Now therefore, be it finally resolved that the Township Committee Utility Liaison and Bernards Township Utility Task Force will organize immediately upon its appointment by all members of the Township Committee. With that, I want to start off by saying thank you to Ms. Harris for coming up with the new wording on that. It's a mouthful. And I'm going to open up to, Township Committee comments before we go to the public. Would anybody care to comment or begin?
All I'll say is it's long overdue.
Yes.
Okay. With that, I'll go to the public.
I'm sorry.
go
I
ahead.
actually just, I think to set expectations, while I'm in favor of this, this task force and this township committee are not empowered to make changes to our energy providers.
No, we're not.
Okay,
No,
so,
yeah, it's, my understanding is, listen, we want to be able to give however many residents, what this task force is going to be charged with is, my understanding, coming up with ways that will better help with our service provider from JCP&L and better communication methods in terms of us being able to communicate better with them, and advocating on behalf of the township and its residents with the BPU, because I think that's a key part of being able to get any change, if you will, going forward. So that's, are we on the same page?
Yes,
Yes.
I just wanted to
Yes.
make that clarification.
Thank you.
If I could give a little perspective too.
Please.
With respect to the cable companies, it used to be that every several years, they had to come before the township committee, every township committee in the state, to have their franchise renewed. And it was at that time that, we aired our grievances, and we received commitments from them regarding improved service, and we squeezed them for goodies that we wanted for the township. That's gone. That's all taken care of at the state level now, and there's a level removed from us, and so I think the service has suffered correspondingly.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Bring it back.
Yeah, right.
Please, if anyone would like to come up and speak?
Do we need to figure out the blank spots or no?
We'll figure that out.
Okay.
I'd like to listen to, Mr. Allen.
You recognize me with a mask on.
How are you, sir?
Good evening, I'm
Good evening.
fine, 44 Holmesbrook Road. Mr. Mayor, I used to kid Carol Bianchi that during her year of being mayor, she lost the big oak tree. You've had a more difficult time. And I want to commend you and your colleagues and Pat, all your staff, and even consultants, I guess. From what I can see, though I've been kind of in hibernation, you've been doing an excellent job, and I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm very impressed with the room. It's very businesslike, but it adheres to all recommendations. Now, you're attending tonight to two issues that have been around for a while. And I won't talk about your last discussion, except I enjoyed hearing it. John Bellardo and Pat Monaco may remember back in the 90s when Diana Boquist, serving as mayor, led an effort to improve our reliability of our electricity distribution. You guys remember that? And at one point, the administrator at that time, Barbara Pence, and I went to the BPU offices and talked to the staff. And we found out that the reliability record of JCP&L was poor relevant to the other utilities. I think in the next few years, our service, our reliability improved. But then I went on to other things, and except for being without power after Sandy in 12 and after a big snowstorm in 18 and 5 days this last August, I haven't really paid much attention to the issue of power reliability here in Berners Township. But as I said in this letter that I submitted, and which I believe was distributed to you, I've been working for a long time on what we can do about global warming. And all of the things that are proposed talk about more electricity. And I hear lots of very impressive and exciting technological advances that'll help us deal with this problem. But I literally woke up one morning, some weeks ago, thinking, nobody is talking about the reliability of the electrical distribution system. And if that system is not reliable, these other things ain't gonna work. And people are not going to accept them. They're going to keep their gas, which they can depend on. So I got interested in reliability before I heard you were talking about forming a task force. And I started looking into things, and I was very surprised to find, among other things, excuse me, that the mission statement of BPU says nothing at all about reliability of the system. they talk about economics and whatnot. And then, later, I found that in 18, Jersey Central Power and Light had put a major proposal before BPU to improve its reliability. They did this in 2018. But in 2019, the BPU, instead of approving a 4-year plan, they approved only a 2-year plan. And even that 2-year plan, they cut in half. Now, I used to think the problem was JCP&L. But when I read, I didn't read the whole thing, by the way, it's 400 pages. But when I read parts of the JCP&L proposal, I thought, here's a bunch of engineers who want to improve their system. And I was an engineer working in manufacturing. I know people always want to improve their system. And it looks to me like part of the problem is BPU. Now, you said, Mr. Mayor, that one of the things your task force might do is encourage you to lobby BPU or maybe do it themselves. And I think that's going to be very important, that you somehow get BPU on the page of supporting investments that the power company wants to make to improve reliability. Now, I'm not a power engineer, Pat, you may be, or Tom Timko may be, and I don't really understand a lot of the parts of the proposal that JCP&L was making. I'm a numbers person, I can understand the numbers, but I don't understand what they want to buy. But I'm going to assume that there are engineers behind that proposal who do understand what's going on. And so I think we need to here assess from a layman's or maybe semi-professional viewpoint whether what JCP&L was proposing makes sense, and then lobby BPU to let them do it. So if that makes any sense to you, I'd like to help you. And if there's any questions, I'll be here to answer them. And I normally hand in a letter. I don't see Rhonda here, so I'll give it to you, Pat. But I am very interested in this, not only from being a local resident who depends on electrical power, but I'm interested in it from my other viewpoint of doing something about climate change.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, and I enjoy
Appreciate all
coming
your
back and
service throughout the years,
participating in this meeting.
Mr. Allen, you're like the Benjamin Button of Bernard's. Every time I see you, you keep getting younger and younger.
You know, I'm going to tell you something, John. I normally used to eat out a lot, every day, actually. I don't anymore. And I think I'm probably eating at home more healthy, and I've actually lost weight.
You look great. God
Thanks,
bless
John.
you.
I'm hoping it's because he was a sole Democrat on a Republican committee.
Anyone else?
Mr. Allen, I'd just like to say, Rhonda's not here, but I don't know if you know, Jordan Padavano is our deputy clerk.
Hello, Jordan.
Hello, how are you?
Please, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Knox. Could I talk without the mask on?
Yes, sir.
I think we're all a lot more than 6 feet away. I'm not as clever as Bill in so many respects. Bill Knox, I live at 415 Mountain Road, the corner of Mountain Somerville Road. I was here, oh no, excuse me, Planning Board, Solar Array, different committee. I was at this lectern. So 18 months ago, I knew next to nothing about electricity, about energy flows in general in this country. And then I took a course in environmental economics at Drew, which got into a lot of energy and money issues. And then somebody had the bright idea to appoint me to the Somerset County Energy Council, which is an 11-member body appointed by and reporting to the Somerset County freeholders. And I asked, I noted the membership of that council consists entirely of people who actually understand that landscape. They understand that energy industry. They work in it. And I asked, why would you want me? I'm a tax lawyer and financial analyst and advisor. And they said, we need a generalist dummy as a sounding board to, just so that you can, if we are too far away in the weeds sometime, you can point out what nobody else in the public is going to understand that we're doing. And they said, and that would include the freeholders. So 18 months later, I do know now, at least more than I did, about the grid and about the problems we face. And I've been one of the key players on the council in trying to digest the 300-page New Jersey Energy Master Plan that came out of Trenton last winter, and going through it with an eye to identifying what are the significant things that the county could do, because that's what the freeholders want to know. What can we do as a board of freeholders to support this energy master plan? Has that ever been discussed at any point at the township level, the New Jersey Energy Master Plan?
I'll defer to Mr. Carpenter on that to answer that question.
No, we're just trying to get our lights on.
You would like your lights on?
Yeah, we don't,
Well,
we
you
have
know-
never discussed, we really haven't discussed the composition of the BPU or its role, and we certainly never discussed the energy master plan.
Energy master plan.
It's always been grievance redressment.
Right. Yeah, I can well imagine. Yeah, not having electricity gets people's attention real quick in the modern world, certainly in our part of the modern world. So what I wanted to, I just wanted to second Bill's suggestion, and he would make a remarkable lead player, and he's volunteering, to really look into these issues. I talked with our county engineer this afternoon and asked him about this instance that Bill had called to my attention of the BPU only approving part of what JCP&L was finally willing to pony up. And he said they were simply mystified and have never gotten a satisfactory explanation for any people, because they deal with BPU as well. So the Energy Master Plan consists of 7 overarching goals, overarching strategies, excuse me, that form a framework, and then they march through 25 goals. And we're not here to get into the weeds of that. But I'm working right now, there's a small group of us on the council that is working on a presentation to the freeholders next month about what the county can do. One of the things, though, that's very striking about the Energy Master Plan is I would say probably 70% of what needs to be done to realize the 25 goals is going to happen in Trenton, at the state level or at the level of an agency. And maybe another 5% is going to happen at the county level, and the other 25% is going to happen at the municipal level. And that's largely because the municipalities in New Jersey have so much power over land use issues, and land use issues get around to that. But there are many opportunities, I can say, having done this report that's going to be presented to the freeholders, there are many opportunities for townships to take a lead. For instance, townships are invited to do a community energy plan. And a few have done it. Bergen County got really clever. They said, asked the BPU, well, could we just do it at the freeholder level on behalf of all Bergen County communities? And that was granted. The Somerset County freeholders haven't yet indicated an interest in doing that. To the best of the engineers, the county engineers' knowledge, and the assistant engineers, not a single municipality in Somerset County yet has shown any interest in developing a community energy plan. There's a lot of other things that would happen in the municipal level as well. So I'm here simply to support my good friend Bill Allen's interest in getting more resiliency and the resiliency and reliability into the system. Bill was the one who educated me that their mission statement incredibly makes not a single reference the BPU's mission statement. Not a single reference to reliability and resiliency. And that is certainly a big part of the master energy plan, because obviously we'll be in real soup if we've electrified the entire transportation sector, electrified the space and water heating of our buildings, and it's not reliable. It's unforgivable. I don't know whether you all realize that in a way it's a bit of an unfair comparison between JCP&L and PSE&G. PSE&G has a far more reliable system, but they basically occupy a corridor, a stripe across the state from New York City to Philadelphia. They got the fat zone, the sweet zone, and JCP&L has the leftovers on either side. So PSE&G has a far denser concentration of customers and, much shorter average distance between drop points. It's an easier system, but there's no question about it. They do a much better job, and it would be great to have an advocate. But in a way, I guess I'm asking, do you think, is there anybody that I could interface with at the township level? Would there be an interest in the township learning more about the Energy Master Plan and its opportunities to participate in that process?
I'd suggest you fill out a Tap the Talent form.
I'm sorry?
I suggest you fill out a Tap the Talent form on our website and express an interest in this committee we're forming. And that would be a great place for you to get involved.
Okay.
Well,
You have to forgive me then. So I go to bernards.org.
Bernards.org.
Yeah.
There's a form called Tap the Talent.
Tap the Talent?
Yeah, you just fill out a few things about your background and your interests.
I can find that.
Yeah.
I want to clarify something. So I think I'm correct in saying, I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from about energy and talking about that. And I know the county has the Energy Council because they do apply for a lot of grants, receive a lot of money to be able, they're tremendous, they got a tremendous amount of money by changing their buildings over through the energy grants. So that's why they're so into the Energy Council. Right, we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
We possibly will get there. What you're talking about.
BPU has grants for exactly this community energy plan.
Right, but I want to say for you, I hear what you have to say, and I hear what you have to say, and I'm wondering if my colleagues are thinking the same thing. Right now, we're talking about forming this utility committee to discuss, like John had said, the grievances
Right.
and how we can work with the water company and the cable company and the electric company and work with them so that we can get better service and just get more information, communicate better with our residents. It's not an energy-driven committee
Okay.
in that regard. So I'm not sure if you knew that either.
I don't know that you can really keep those issues separate, in fact, because they need to go through a complete retooling of their business models. All the electric utilities
Which in
do.
turn will
And how much they're going to allocate to maintenance is
Right.
going to be part of the discussion.
But right now, we're focusing on that. That's how I
No,
understood it.
I understand that I'm
I
off
understood.
topic to an extent.
No, you're not, because he had the same, he brought up the same thing.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tap the talent.
Tap the Talent.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. Anybody else have any comments regarding the Utility Advisory Task Force? No? Okay. Thank you. All right, would anybody like to begin discussion?
I'm fine with it as is.
Well, we need to put the number of people.
What is everyone comfortable with in terms of the number of members?
I thought 6 plus 1 liaison.
7?
Yeah, that includes liaison though.
Yeah.
You know, I did a little, when Mrs. Harris and I were discussing the number of people to have in the committee, I requested from Jordan, I think, some information about the number of people on the committees. And with the exception of a couple of outliers, I think the average is about 9, actually.
Oh, 9?
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe 8 plus liaison? That would be nice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
And report recommendations no later than November?
That's hard because,
Uh,
yeah, but we have to get people on the committee.
No, that's true. But
I would think at least 6 months,
6
no.
months, June? right in time
June
for summer, so-
2021.
How about 6 months from, no later than
From
6 months
inception?
from inception? Yeah. And just a comment I had based on what we heard from the public, you know, the liaison who's appointed to this can certainly work with those other groups. I think even the county has a, did they, maybe that's
The
same
Energy
thing.
Council, you mean?
Yeah, so, and I think, didn't we receive some correspondence asking us if we wanted to have a township liaison? So I kind of see this
Oh, to
as
the
going
Energy
hand in
Council, you
hand.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody
They
want to
have to-
volunteer for that?
I'll do it.
Yeah? Is everybody good with Mrs. Fields serving on that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Mr. Carpenter? Mrs. Fields as a liaison?
Absolutely.
All right,
Okay.
perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so then we'll do Township Committee recommendations, Township Committee no later than 6 months after inception. And how many times annually? Do we want to do that? Or do we just want to leave it? Then they could come in whenever they get a report.
I suggest once a year,
Yeah, like the,
and they'll work autonomously to accomplish their task. We don't want to be hearing from everybody every
All
couple
right,
of
then we'll
months.
just leave it in, well, do we want a specific date?
I would suggest, it's actually kind of late in the year. I would suggest we focus on getting members for it, that it convene in the beginning of January, and that it provide a report by the middle of June.
yeah, I think
By the end
That
of
sounds
June.
good.
By June 30th. Okay. We'll work that out. All right, so then that's all we're gonna do is we're gonna,
And 9 members.
9 members of the
One
public.
is the liaison, which is
One.
me.
All right. All right, then, with those changes, I'll take a motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Jordan.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Fields?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Baldessari?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, and thank you for your comments on that. Very, very interesting and very good to know. I'm looking forward to learning more about this.
The name of that committee will be?
I'm sorry, it's the Utility Advisory Task Force. No, not right.
Okay. All right.
All right. Okay. All right. Which brings us to public comment. Comments are welcome during public comment period during this meeting on any agenda item or other matter over which the Township Committee has jurisdiction. However, if an ordinance is listed for its own public hearing on the agenda, please hold your comments for that particular public hearing. To address this body, the speaker must come forward to the microphone, state his or her name and address for the record. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The clerk will keep time. Please promptly yield the floor when time is called and return to your seat. Your cooperation in adherence to these rules of order will ensure an orderly and respectful meeting. Public comment is now open. Yes, sir, Mr. Sandler. Good evening.
John Sandler, 16 Vale Terrace. Good evening, Mayor and committee members. I hope that you and your families are doing well and staying healthy. I'm here this evening to ask that the Township Committee start accepting public comment by email once again. As you will recall, when the quarantine began and Township Committee meetings were being held over Zoom, all public comment was submitted by email. Once the Township Committee resumed holding meetings in person, emailed public comment was precluded, except for the first meeting that was back in the building. The public comments submitted at that meeting by email were handled in an effective and organized manner by our municipal clerk with no visible downside. Indeed, all of those township residents who had something to say were heard. From that point on, for some reason, the Township Committee decided to stop accepting public comment by email and required that any public comment be made in person during the public comment portion of the committee meeting. I understand that this has been the protocol for as long as meetings have been held, but it seems to me, especially given the realities of the world today, that public comment should be accepted by email. By requiring residents to appear in person to make public comment, you're effectively requiring our neighbors to choose between concerns over their own health and safety and participation in local government. As the governing body, in my opinion, you all should want to make it as easy as possible for the residents of Bernards Township to participate and make their comments on the record. Many residents of Bernards Township may also have other issues that would prevent them from attending a meeting in person. This could include childcare or other scheduling issues. And participating in local government should not be a reward for being able to get out of the house on a Tuesday night. We certainly have the technological capability to accept public comment by email, as it has been done before, even during in-person meetings. Therefore, there is no good excuse to preclude people from submitting public comment by email. Refusing to do so only accomplishes one goal, which is silencing the voices of residents that may have issues they want to address on the record. Therefore, I'm encouraging you to go back to accepting public comment by email and to do so going forward. This will go a long way in improving transparency and fostering an environment where the Township Committee wants to hear from all of its residents, not just those who can get out of the house on a Tuesday night. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sandler.
Cody Smith, 36 Royal Oak Drive. To let Todd go last, he's going to have to hear about the mosque one more time. So I think with a couple of the comments that were said afterwards, I didn't want to interrupt people in their comments. But one of the things that I learned in that process was at the planning board meetings, I would always get a recording of the meeting after the meeting have occurred. I would download it on my phone and I would go for a walk and I would listen to what was said at that meeting. And I noted a lot of things that I didn't hear when I was in the room, and I wasn't even participating in the discussion. And so earlier tonight, when I said it was the Democrat, I didn't pronounce it right, and I saved you from reading my lengthy thing that I was going to read. The Bernards Township Democrat Committee and ISBR. And if you go out there and you look at some of the recordings and the tapings on the Democrats' website, it's clear that they were all over this issue and promoting it and picking out people that didn't support that initial resolution. And if you listen to the words that the three of you that didn't support that initial resolution, it's quite clear what you said. And there was somebody, Ms. Harris, who was upset that her resolution wasn't being drafted at that meeting. And a lot of the conversation was around, you must agree and you're not working with me and everything else, and that's why you didn't support my resolution. So to me, it's quite clear what happened. I didn't bring it up, but we know Ms. Chadha is an ISBR trustee. She hasn't come out and said anything about what happened in that whole thing that I'm aware of. It's kind of like the issue that's avoided. And whoever the Democrat person was last year was saying that that's the reason why she didn't win the election last year when she ran. And to your comment, Ms. Harris, about 400 people that supported it, I think it's a lot what Todd said and what I face every day at work. If you open your mouth, and I'll probably get garbage about what I'm saying tonight, if you open your mouth, you're labeled. That's the society that we live in today. So I wouldn't take 400 emails supporting this thing and indicate it's 400 to 0. There's a lot of people that are afraid to speak up. Just like in the ISBR matter, this is the same thing. There are a lot of people that are afraid to speak up. And why I'm passionate about it is I spent 4 years on it. You probably don't know the quicks. I don't think you attended any of the planning board meetings and saw the antics that went on. I don't think you lived the lawsuit with a server throwing a subpoena at your wife, right, and harassing you. I don't think you had to hire a lawyer. I don't think you had to cut checks to a lawyer simply because you got up in this forum and said something that was on your mind and why you disagreed with it. And so I spent 4 years of my life doing that, and that's why I'm passionate about it. And I took a lot of crap during that 4 years, and I would do the same thing again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Mr. Edelstein.
Todd Edelstein, Riverside Drive. I take no exception. I just want to start by saying I apologize if I got loud and if I was rude to any of the council people, because that wasn't my intent. Like I said, I felt that from those meetings, I thought that, Joe, I thought they were attacking the council, you know, the people who weren't supportive of it. I saw it, I sat there, I intentionally didn't say anything because it was a packed room, and it would have went bad, and I'm sorry I got emotional about it. I shouldn't have gotten emotional about it. Like I said, according, with the mosque, I don't care if there's a mosque there or whatever, if it's a temple or a church. It's a small area, it's residents live there, and they were, basically, put upon. And had that been built anywhere else, it may not have been the problems that we had. But it's there now, and I'm ready to move on. And I think other people need to also move on with it also, and not keep on accusing the town council for what happened. I think it's wrong. So I just want to apologize if I was, and to you, Mr. Joe.
No need to, Todd. Thank you.
Since the court's going to be closing, or the violations bureau, I was kind of wondering what's going to go on with those rooms down there, what's moving in there, if anything's planned to be moving in there.
We haven't determined yet.
Okay, because that'd be a nice little room for me. I could look out the window, count how many people walk by, how many times police cars drive by. I was just wondering about that. This past weekend, they were doing a thing about giving away Narcan spray, one of these things. And, it was a limited thing, you come up there, you get it for free. And the only place in the area near here was the Burnsville ShopRite. So I said to myself, not that I use heroin or anything like that. I prefer, inject myself with something other than that. But I thought I'm going to come up and get it. And maybe I could find somebody who actually really needs it. And I got all this, they give you all these pamphlets here. And of course, we're receiving this Narcan today from the state of New Jersey for free. But it's not for free. We're all paying out of our taxes. So, it's kind of an insult to see this. But with all this literature, nothing tells you how to use this. The instructions are inside here. And I was wondering, because how do you use this thing? I'm sure maybe it's just sticking and spray in, but there must be something you got, because I think they give you 2 in here. So you have to wait a couple minutes to use the second one if it doesn't come out. So I kind of thought it was kind of silly to have these pamphlets and nothing says how to use this. But I have this now, and since I have it, I don't really need it. And I'm going to donate it to the town, where they can put it somewhere. I thought maybe, that the fire hose box outside this room, which is empty, maybe you could store it there, put a label on in case if somebody passes out under an unknown, reason, use it. It's not going to hurt somebody if they're, and it could help somebody. And some people do self-medicate. We don't know who, but people do self-medicate. And if not there, at least it's somewhere. I'm kind of surprised that, do we have a defibrillator in this, automatic defibrillator in this building?
That's a good question.
Because I was thinking.
Downstairs when you come in, I think I've noticed.
Is there, okay. Well, then maybe store that next to that. I wasn't sure. Because, usually one of those things are right in the hallway and there's signs pointing to it and stuff. And I think it's good that we have this task force for the utilities. I wasn't really all for it at the beginning, but the more I thought about it, I said to myself, maybe with the town advocating for everybody, down the BPU, it might help with stuff. I don't expect any miracles here. Like we said, years ago, somebody from PSE, JCP&L, or somebody from cable will be here, hat in hand, we're trying to do our best and help out the residents, and nothing ever got done. And But now they don't even have to do it, because like you said, the state took all that over, just like the money we used to get for the utility poles. The state takes that money too. So, until the state decides to, not burn that money, maybe the towns could get it back. But I think, United, may have a bigger voice in going after the BPU. Have a nice evening, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public comment? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comment. Next on the agenda is Township Committee, Liaison, and Board Reports and Staff Comments. Pat?
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to recognize our Fire Prevention Bureau for National Fire Prevention Week, fire official Mark Sylvester, Russell Neidigger, and Robert Houlihan for providing outstanding service to our community. Also, to update you on our website redesign, we are way ahead of schedule. In the next week or so, we will be rolling out the new website for the township. Staff has been working, getting trained. The difference now will be that every department will be updating. It'll be a more cohesive, a more a uniform website. So the rollout will be in a week or so. Health department will follow shortly thereafter. And stay tuned, we are working with a separate media vendor to update software for the PEG channel. So you'll be able to, we'll be making a recommendation for bringing in new software that will be able to stream videos and that sort of thing. So that's in the works as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Jordan?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would also like to echo what Pat said about National Fire Prevention Week. Further down on the consent agenda, there's a resolution recognizing that week in the township. As a firefighter myself, I can speak to the importance of that week and the importance of the job our fire official Mark Sylvester and his staff perform in town with building inspections and investigations, presenting educational programs to the township. Fire Prevention Week is a great time for residents to check their detectors, organize education classes offered from Mark, and just to be aware. And also, as far as elections go, our drop box in the town hall has been getting a lot of foot traffic. The drop box is located in the rear of the town hall, and it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And every morning, the County Board of Elections comes and collects those ballots. Also, for this election, residents are welcome to go to the polling places on election day to drop off their ballot in person if they wish to do so, and that is between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. The two polling places we have in town are the Fellowship Deaconry on Valley Road and the Community Center on South Maple. They're the same polling places from the primary. That's it.
And I would encourage, if we can, to continue pumping out information regarding regarding the mail-in ballots, dropping them off, being able to drop off here, getting it out on social media, on our website, and everything else, just to continue to pump it out there to the public and make sure that they're refreshed and aware.
If anyone has any questions regarding elections, they're more than welcome to call the clerk's office. We're more than happy to help and offer any information you need.
Thank you. Ms. Harris.
So just my comment tonight, I just want to take a moment to honor the passing of Justice Ruth Ginsburg. Justice Ginsburg attended Harvard Law School as one of 7 women and 500 men. When her husband became ill and she had to move to New York, she requested to finish her studies at Columbia, but Harvard's dean said no. She transferred to Columbia Law School and reached the top of her class. And despite her entry into both Harvard and Columbia and graduating at the top of her class, she could not find employment after graduation, as there still existed systemic and cultural barriers to employment based solely on gender. In reviewing her resume, Justice Frankfurter of the Supreme Court remarked, "She looked great on paper, but I can't have a woman in my chambers." Justice Ginsburg was committed to the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection under the law, and while she single-handedly probably did more than any other person to ensure equality of the sexes, she also wrote opinions involving efforts to overcome a history of racial injustice and joined in opinions extending equality norms to LGBTQ persons. And I might also add that she joined in more opinions with her conservative associate justices than she did with the so-called liberal justices. But very apropos of this evening and the discussions that we've been having, what we might learn best from Ruth Ginsburg at this moment is that she proved it was possible to build deep and meaningful friendships with people despite severe disagreements. In an op-ed in the Washington Post, Eugene Scalia, the present U.S. Secretary of Labor and son of the late Antonin Scalia, had this to say about his father and Justice Ginsburg's long relationship. What we can learn from the justices is how to welcome debate and differences. The two justices had central roles in addressing some of the most divisive issues of the day, including cases on abortion, same-sex marriage, and who would be president. Not for a moment did one think the other should be condemned or ostracized. More than that, they believed what they were doing, arriving at their own opinions thoughtfully and advancing them vigorously, was essential to the national good. With less debate, their friendship would have been diminished, and so they believed would be our democracy. So I want to thank Mr. Carpenter again for his work with me on the resolution. Justice Scalia would give Justice Bader 24 roses on her birthday. And May came and went, John, and I think you got to step it up.
I think Mrs. Harris just compared herself to Justice Ginsburg and me to Justice Scalia.
Well, figuratively. We have a long way to go to fill those shoes. But I would just like, if we could just take a moment of silence for her. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fields.
Now I can breathe, okay. So my committee reports, the Board of Education on Tuesday, September 22nd, the element...
You can push it back a little bit if you're
Oh.
wearing that thing.
Push what back? Oh, it's too loud, okay. There's so many people here, I want to make sure that they can hear me. So the Board of Education on Tuesday, September 22nd, the elementary schools have opened. Grades pre-K, first and second started in-person hybrid schedule. Thursday, October 1st, grades 3rd through 12 will start in-person hybrid schedule. You know that's always changing, so please go to the Board of Ed website for updates. The Deer Commission, the deer season has begun, it's off and running, and they certainly are running. Farmstead had their annual meeting on Saturday. They're continuing with their virtual art classes, and they are busy working on their property. They received some grant money, so there's a lot of property improvements that are going on there at the farmstead. So Pat and I are thrilled about that. Liberty Corner First Aid, very happy to report that they had asked us, which we referred to the county, to do some stripping, this is Liberty Corner First Aid, to do some stripes in front of their building so that it would slow the traffic down. So when they bring out the ambulance, it kind of would create a barrier there, a block, so that they can get out. So that was done. Thank you, Pat. I really appreciate that. Also want to say congratulations to Douglas Gazelle and Sojana Sharma for becoming full members of the Liberty Corner First Aid Squad. The Liberty Corner Fire Department, I just want to recognize again, it's National Fire Prevention Week. Please check and install new batteries in your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And additionally, which is really important, you really should have a fire extinguisher on hand in your home. So if you don't have one, it would be really great if you go out and purchase one. I have one, I keep it in the kitchen under the sink just in case for small fires. And like Joan had said, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's a woman I admired, and so many women have really truly admired. She was a legend, a true legend. And one thing that was important for women like myself is she really broke a lot of glass ceilings. And we really appreciate that effort that she made, because for women, it really made a difference. And she changed the world in incredible ways. And when you go through life as a woman and you see women like that make a difference and make it a little easier for yourself, you really grow to appreciate them. So I just want to say I'm really thankful for her service to our country, and may she rest in peace. Also want to acknowledge that Hispanic Heritage Month takes place September 15th to October 15th every year. It's a time to celebrate the many contributions, diverse cultures, and extensive history of the American Latino community. And congratulations to Scott M. Binkley for becoming a full member to the Basking Ridge Fire Company. And not really lastly, but this one's the most important one. Congratulations, Mayor, and to your wife, Tracy, for becoming grandparents to Lewis.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
congratulations, Grandpa.
Grandpa, it's a great name. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mr. Esposito.
Well, first, I'd like to echo what everyone has said about Justice Ginsburg. And just Joan, you know, that beyond just, you know, intellectual debates, I believe Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg were drinking buddies, so I expect that.
A lot gets done.
So there'll be wine with those flowers.
So, and I wanted to welcome Jordan this is his first official meeting as our function as our clerk, and excellent job.
Second time.
Second time, first as deputy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
And just to mention that the planning board is not meeting next week, but on October 20th, we begin to take action on the recommendations to the revisions to the master plan. So anyone interested in developments of the master plan starts October 20th.
Gotcha. Mr. Carpenter.
I just want to congratulate you, Mayor, on becoming a grandfather. Have you chosen your grandfather name yet?
Grandpa.
Grandpa.
Just
All right.
plain and simple, Grandpa.
Okay, congrats.
Thank you. Mr. Velardo.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to echo the sentiments regarding Justice Ginsburg. Clearly a wonderful life, tremendous accomplishment, and, you know, we're all, I think, better off for her having served on the Supreme Court, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on. Not too much tonight. I wanted to bring up the fact, I don't know if everybody has Netflix, but I watched this thing called The Social Dilemma. And I think that this should be mandatory for everyone to watch. And it just goes to show is what Ms. Harris was just saying before in terms of the divisiveness of today and where we are and how it's getting harder and harder to have civil discourse or respectful dialogue and respectful disagreements with each other. And a lot of this is, it turns out to be, that's the way things are geared on regarding social media. And I absolutely, I suggest everybody take a look at it. And one of the things that I'm going to point out is two of the most disturbing aspects of just how social media has such an impact on our lives. The U.S. hospitals admissions for non-fatal or self-harm admissions for, you know, before 2009 were relatively static. They were relatively consistent. And from 2009 on till I think 2018 or whenever the study was completed, teen girls from ages 15 to 19, there was a 62% increase in terms of the mental health admissions, and you know where they would cut themselves or they'd have mental issues and they'd go and psychological issues and have to be seek counsel for that. Preteen girls, ages 10 to 14, there was an increase of 189% over from 2009 on, which is just unconscionable. And these are kids that you know, the preteen from 96 on, they've grown up seeing their phones, putting their phone in front of their face the entire time, and just, you know, the bullying and everything else that has unfortunately come with social media has really taken a hold. Suicide rates for teen girls ages 15 through 19, an increase of 70% from 2009 on till today. Again, it was relatively static. Preteen girls 10 through 14, an increase of about 151%. So what I would say to parents, and what I'm doing now, and a lot of these, when you're watching this very interesting and educational documentary, so to speak, all of these social, the engineers, the software engineers, the gurus, all of the intellects that made this, they made these technologies. You know, all of them on this thing say, I'm absolutely addicted to this, this is why, but none of them will let their kids on any of it. And I think that that's just something, if everybody has an opportunity to watch The Social Dilemma, it's very eye-opening, and it's something that needs to change. I think our government at the national level, certainly national level, has way more to do in terms of getting involved in understanding what they actually have and what's actually being done. And, you know, things just need to change. So I highly recommend everybody watching that. And that's my comments for the evening. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Can we get moving?
All right. With that, I'm going to move on to fire and rescue appointment, resolution 20200317.
This is a resolution for the appointment to membership in Township of Bernards Volunteer Liberty Corner First Aid Squad Douglas Gazelle as a full member and Sanjana Sharma as a full member.
Excellent. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion to move resolution 200317.
All right. A second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Sanjana and Douglas. Thank you. Next on the agenda is resolution 20200318.
This is a resolution for the appointment to membership in Township of Bernards Volunteer Basking Ridge Fire Company Number 1, Scott M. Brinkley as a full member.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Scott Brinkley, and thank you very much for your service. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Items listed within the consent agenda portion of the meeting have been referred to the Township Committee for reading and study, linked to the posted agenda, and are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion of the Township Committee with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is required, the item may be removed from the agenda by Township Committee action and placed on the regular agenda under new business. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anyone would like removed?
Mayor, I'd like items 4 and 5 removed.
Anything else? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to move the remainder of the consent agenda.
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please. George.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Fields?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Baldessari?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, Mr. Carpenter, would you care to comment on 4?
Yeah, I have questions about both of these are related, and I just wondered if we could get an explanation, either from Pat or John, about what this is all about. I know the landfill's been closed for a long time. I know there's money set aside. What is the purpose of this, just in English for the public?
So these are escrow funds that have been set aside, and in order to utilize them, we need to do these resolutions for the DEP. And so this basically will say what is left and how we're apportioning it for the years from now to the end of the 30-year monitoring.
Great, and there's no need for additional escrow? This is just, it's what it is?
It is what it is. But it's supposed to expire in 30 years. John, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if the DEP has the authority to extend it afterwards.
This has been on here a long
Right.
time, because when was that landfill closed? At least 20 years ago, right?
Who said 96, I think?
Yeah, this will take it to 30 years.
But I've seen these, I think T&M, and, you know, we've always paid a certain amount of money this year just related to monitoring.
Yeah, this is air and water testing, which DEP says we need to continue at a 30-year period. So it is supposed to expire in 30 years, but I don't know if the DEP has the authority to extend it beyond that.
I doubt they would, but
Right.
we do it every year. It's always
Right.
been on.
All right, thank you. I'll move 2020-0308.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Fields?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Baldessari?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I'll move 2020-0309.
I'll second.
Roll call, please, George.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Ms. Fields?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Baldessari?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next on the agenda, the approval of minutes from September 15th, open session minutes. If everybody had a chance to review those, I will take a motion.
I'll move the minutes.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Which brings us to our second public comment, so I will open that to the public. Public comment is open.
Todd, Riverside Drive. I'm sorry, I meant to say this before, about the public comments and the request for emailing comments. And I'm all for transparency, and I actually fought for transparency for many years for a second public comment. So I understand about comments. And people have always been allowed to write letters to the town or email the town with, questions or ideas, wherever. But to make it part of the record for, a public record, basically for public comment, I'm not really crazy about it. Just because we have an email from somebody that's going to be read out, we don't know where that email's being generated from. It could be, whoever they decide to open that Google account or Yahoo or Gmail and put whatever name they want put on there. And I think people have a lot of different ways of asking questions or commenting to the town council, but not public comment right here. And I'm against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.